Hello friends, thank you for watching this video. I am Mohamad and I will be showing you today how to add refresh tokens to our JWT authentication to our ASP.NET Core REST API. Some of the topics we will cover are refresh tokens, some new endpoint functionalities, as well as JWT tokens. Please like and subscribe if you like this video. This is part 3 of our REST API journey. We will be basing our work on our previous to-do REST API application that we have built in our last 2 videos. Links to those videos will be in the description down below as well as on the upper right hand side corner. You can follow along either by watching those videos and building the application with me, or you can get the starting source code from the description down below. Before we start implementing JWT refresh tokens, we will examine how refresh tokens will actually work. By nature, JWT is a short-lived token, and the shorter the time that it's lived, it's safer. And for us to get JWT tokens, there's going to be 2 ways. The first way is going to be if we have a user and they're gonna log into the server. Every time they log in, they get a JWT token in return. And this JWT token will last, for example, let's say 5 minutes. So after this 5 minutes is over, the user have to relog in again and do the same process all over again. This is not a really good implementation because in every 5 minutes we're gonna request the user to input their credentials again and log in. And we can see, for example, Instagram, Twitter, all of these big companies don't have that. They have those functionality automatically enabled as the refresh tokens in order for us to get tokens every time our previous token expired. The next way for us to get always JWT token is to have refresh tokens. So what happens? So instead of always doing this process again, so within the first JWT token, we're gonna have here a refresh token with it. And this refresh token is gonna be responsible to doing this process for us. So it's gonna automatically regenerate the token and it's gonna automatically send it back without even the user noticing. This process will happen automatically in the background without the user ever knowing. So what is a refresh token? A refresh token is anything. We can make it anything we want. It can be a string, it can be a GUID, an ID, anything we want. The longer the better in order for us to make it more secure. So why is it important to have a short-lived JWT token? The main reason is security. So let's say for any reason our JWT token has been compromised. The JWT token have an expiry date, and this expiry date is only gonna be, for example, 5 minutes. So after those 5 minutes, the user will, anyone who stole our JWT token will not gonna be able to use our application. So let's say, for example, we have a user, and this user has taken, for example, from the server a token, JWT, and this token here has been lost. And since it's already lasts for 5 minutes, and if someone else takes it, let's put someone with a hat, and if that someone with a hat takes it, it's only gonna be for 5 minutes. So they cannot use it again against our server. It will not work because it's short-lived. So this user here will only have it for 5 minutes. So this is why it needs to be a short-lived token, and it's always better for security. Now let's examine how actually JWT token works. So first of all, this is gonna be, let's specify it in a way. We have a user and we're gonna have a server, and the server is gonna be connected to a database, and the user will have, let's say, local cache in the browser. And we're gonna have all of these to summarize the request that we have. So the first request is gonna be from the user to the server as a login, which is good. Then the server, let's put here server, okay. So the server is gonna return to us after it has authorized the user JWT with refresh. So right now the user have to make a new request. So this new request is gonna take the JWT as well as the refresh. The server will do all of the work, and then it's gonna turn back to us the response. The user at this time within the local cache has the JWT saved and the refresh token saved. So let's say for example the user wants to make a new call. So the user wants to make a new call. It goes here. Let's make this different colors so we can understand the differences. So once the user, let's remove this first. Okay. So this user here now wants to make a call. Let's say for example he wants to get all of the products, for example. Products. So in order for the user to get any call or any products, for example, they need to be authorized. So the server is gonna check the JWT token. Check the token. Once the server notices that the token has expired, it's gonna return back to the user. It's gonna return back expired notice. Expired token. The user during all of this thinks that there's only one request happening, which is get products. So what's gonna happen right now with the API? The API is gonna send a new request to the server which containing the token and the refresh token. The server is gonna do the checking, the verification, and then once everything is back on track, it's gonna return back to the user a token, a brand new token, and a brand new refresh token. Perfect. So once we have that, the user thinks, okay, they have a new token, they're gonna send back for the products. The API will see that everything is right, that the token has not expired and the user is authenticated, and it's gonna return back the response. So just to do like a quick summary, as we can see right now from here, that all of this and all of this processing from the user side and from the server side all happen within one request, and the user thought everything has been smooth process. So they didn't think that, oh, they have to log in again. They didn't know that they had expired. The refresh token, that functionality take care of everything. The user might have a bit of a delay, like maybe a half a second or a few milliseconds delay until this entire process happen, but it make it way smoother than asking the user every time to log in again. So this is why it's really important for us to implement a JWT refresh token when we're implementing it with an API. So let's get started. We'll first start by updating our startup class by making the token validation parameters available across our application. So how do we do that? We go to our startup class, we go to our token validation parameter. Let's take all of these and let's create a new variable. We'll call this variable token validation params equal, and we paste the information that we have coded. As we can see, it requires a key. So first let's take this, we'll add it to our token validation parameters. We'll take the key and we'll paste it before the declaration. Perfect. So once we add those, let's make sure that our application is still building by going to the terminal and typing .NET build, and we can see it build succeeded. After that, what we need to do is we need to update our generate JWT token in order to shorten the expiry time frame. How do we do that? We need to go to our controllers, auth management, and let's scroll down to our generate JWT token function that we have created, and instead of making it 6 hours, we're gonna change it to seconds, and we're gonna make it every 30 seconds the token will expire. This is only for demo purposes. Usually in a live application, what you can do is you can make it every 5 to 10 minutes. So every 5 to 10 minutes, the JWT token will expire and it needs to be regenerated, which is great. So the next step for us is we need to update our auth result. So within our configuration folder, within our auth results, we need to add a new refresh token so we can return it back to the client. So we'll add a new property. It's gonna be a string, and we're gonna call it refresh token. Great. Then we're gonna be add a new class within our request in order for us to be able to accept those request tokens. So basically, whenever a refresh token is gonna be expired, the client will do a new call to our API, and they're gonna be sending with them an object. Within that object is gonna be our refresh token request, and that is gonna contain 2 variable, token and refresh token. So in order for us to add those, we need to go to models, DTOs, under request, we'll add a new class, and this class will call it token request. And basically it's gonna contain 2 properties. It's gonna be a string, which is gonna be the current JWT token that the client has, and the other one is gonna be the refresh token that also the client got. String, and we'll call it refresh token. And let's add some attributes. So these has to be required. And let's fix the references. And we'll copy this and we'll put it on the second property. Perfect. So now we have added those. The next step is to add a new model in order for us to let entity framework know where are we gonna be storing those refresh tokens, so we are able to map them. So under the models folder, outside the DTO, let's add the new class, and this class will call it refresh tokens. Okay, good. So the first thing we're gonna add is gonna be an ID. It's gonna be of type int. The second thing we're gonna add is the user ID of type string, because basically we're gonna be utilizing the ASP.NET Core identity, and that ID is gonna be of type string. Actually, it's gonna be of type GWT, but for simplicity reason, we're gonna be using string. The third property is gonna be also a string, which is gonna be token. The fourth is gonna be also a string, which is gonna be of type, which is gonna be the name JWT ID. So basically, this is the ID of the JWT that this refresh tokens belong to. And then we're gonna add another boolean, which is gonna see if it's used or not. Is used, and another boolean, which is gonna be is revoked. So in case the user revoked all of the access token, this boolean will be updated. And then we're gonna add the last 2 items, which is gonna be type datetime, it's gonna be the added date, so basically the date that this token has been created. And we're gonna also add the last one, also of type datetime, and we're gonna be specifying the expiry date of this refresh token, because basically refresh tokens are long-lived tokens when JWTs are short-lived tokens. So the JWT token usually lasts, as we mentioned before, 5 to 10 minutes on a live application, where in different cases the refresh token will last, for example, a few months to a year. So it's always best to, for example, make the expiry date of a refresh token 6 months. Expiry date. And we'll just fix the references, and they're ready. Perfect. So after we do that, what we need to do is we need to link this table to our ASP.NET Core identity table. So how do we do that? Since we are using entity framework, it's gonna be very easy for us to do that. All we need to do is add a foreign key to that table. So first of all, we define the property, which is gonna be using identity user. We're gonna call it user, and it's gonna be as simple as setter and getter. Let's fix those references, and then we're just gonna add an attribute to define the foreign key. And once we have that, we're just gonna define on which type of property we're gonna link, and it's gonna be on the user ID. Perfect. So now let's fix those references, and let's make sure we saved everything, and let's try to build the application, make sure everything is still building. Perfect. So after we have added our model, the next step is to update our API context, so DB context. So how do we do that? We're gonna go to our data folder. We have the API DB context. Underneath this, we're gonna add another public virtual DB set, and we're gonna call it refresh tokens, and we're gonna call it refresh tokens. Very easy. And it's gonna be get and set. Perfect. So right now what we did is we created our model, and now we have added to our API DB context. And the last two steps, first of all, we're gonna create a migration, and then we're gonna implement this migration, and then we're gonna check it within our database. So how do we do that? We go back to our terminal, we type .NET EF migrations add, and we'll give this migration a name. We'll call added refresh tokens table. Enter. This can take 5 to 10 seconds. Perfect. And then what we need to do is we need to implement those migration scripts that have been created. If we see under the migration folder, refresh token table with all of the functionality or default parameters that we gave it. And how do we implement those changes to our database? By simply typing .NET EF database update. This will also take 5 to 10 minutes, 5 to 10 seconds, sorry. After we do that, we can see it's done. And we can verify that by opening our DB tool. I'm going to be using DB Beaver. Okay, great. Now let's open the app. Let's first close this. We don't really need it now. Yes. And now let's open a new one. Basically, we connect to our current application. Next. And it's gonna be on our desktop. And under to do, we have app.db. And let's test the connection. Perfect. And now let's open it. And right now, once we open the tables, we can see we have a new table here called refresh tokens. And if we open it right now, we can see there is no data inside of it. It's completely empty. Perfect. So once we have done that, the next step for us is to create our new refresh token endpoint. But before we do that, we need to add some pipelines to our auth management controllers. So let's go to our auth management controller. And let's go all the way to the top. The first thing we're gonna add is the token validation parameters that we have injected. So private read only token validation parameters, and we'll call them token validation params. And let's initialize them within our constructor. Basically, once we add it as a singleton, the dependency, the dependency injector that we have will automatically pick it up, and it will automatically figure it out how it's gonna inject it within our constructor in this controller. So let's add it here, token validation parameters, and we'll call it token validation params and then it's gonna be as simple as token validation parameter equal token validation params. Perfect. The next step we're gonna do is we're gonna add our DB context. So again, private read only API DB context. We're gonna call it as simple as API DB context, and let's fix the references. Perfect. Now let's add it again to our parameters. As well, it's automatically injected for us through the dependency injection, and we're gonna call it API DB context, and then it's gonna be simply linking it up. API DB context equal API context. Perfect. So once we inject the required parameters, we need to update our generate token function to include the refresh token. So let's scroll down to our generate token function, and the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna change the definition of this function. So the first thing is we're gonna make this function async, because we're gonna be connecting to the database and writing data to our database. Second, the return type is gonna change from a string to an object. So first we're gonna make it as a task, and then the object that we're gonna return is the auth result object. Perfect. And now what we need to do is we need to update the rest of the function. So the first thing we're gonna do is, after our token has been created, let's initialize a new refresh token. And equal new refresh token. And let's fix the references before we continue. Perfect. And now first we're gonna start by adding the JWT ID. So JWT ID equal token.id. So this token here is coming from the previously defined JWT token, and the ID is here. Perfect. The next one is we're gonna see if this is used or not. It's gonna be false, so is used equal false, as well as revoked equal false. And then we're gonna be adding the user ID equal user.id, and then we're gonna add the date time added. And since we're gonna be utilizing across different environments, it's always best to use the UTC time. So we're gonna put a date equal date time dot UTC now. Then we're gonna add an expiry date, and for this refresh token the expiry date will be 6 months from now, so we're gonna put date time dot UTC now dot add months, and we're gonna make it 6 months. Perfect. And then lastly we're gonna be generating the token, the refresh token that we're gonna be using. So token, so we can have the refresh token anything we want. It could be a string, it could be a GUID, it could be a combination of two, and that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna make it a combination of two. So first we're gonna utilize a function called random string, and we're gonna make it of 35 characters, as well as we're gonna attach to it a GUID. It's always better to make this refresh token as secure as possible. New GUID. So let's create now the random string function. So after this we'll create public, but let's make it private string, and call it random string, and it's gonna take int, it's gonna be the length, and then we're gonna utilize the var random function from C# equal new random, and then we're gonna put all of the characters that we want. I have this already set aside, so I'll just copy paste it. Perfect. The next one is we're gonna just return now the string using the random one. So we'll put return new string enumerable dot repeat chars. It's a very simple string generator dot length, so we define the length that we want. Dot select random dot next and we'll make it to array. Perfect. So it's a very simple function. First we created a random generator from C#, then we defined the characters that's gonna be within our function, within our token, within our string, and then basically we just initialize the new string, use the enumerable repeat, we got the characters, the length, and then we selected the random characters from within those chars and inputting them in order, and then we put them into array and then we return them. Great. So after that, what we need to do is let's go back to our generate JWT function, and now let's save those refresh token our database. So await underscore API DB context dot refresh tokens dot add async and we're gonna pass the refresh token. Perfect. And then what we need to do is as simple as API DB content dot save it changes async. So why did we put both? Since we're using entity framework core, so basically the first function here, we just added this object that we have created into the refresh token table in our memory, and we didn't commit anything to the database. When we put save changes, entity framework will take all of the changes that we have in memory and generate the SQL script, and then it will save it in the database. Perfect. So since we have also updated the return type, we need to update the return here. So instead of directly returning the string, we're gonna be returning a new auth result, and we're gonna be giving it the requirement. So we're gonna give it the token. It's gonna be the JWT token that we generated before. We're gonna give it a success equal true because it's successful, and we're gonna add the refresh token that we have generated equal refresh token dot token. Perfect. Now the next step for us is to update the return of the other two functions in order for us to make sure that nothing is broken, because basically here we're utilizing directly the string and then creating our own responses. So in order for us to do that, instead of returning this, first this is gonna need to be awaited because it became async, and then this one here we can just delete everything from the inside and return the JWT token. Similarly to the other endpoint, which is the login, we fixed the register. We need to await the generate token function, and we need to delete everything from within the OK and just return the JWT token object. Perfect. So once we do that, let's try to build our application. Make sure everything is still working. Let's run it, .NET run, and now let's test it out. Okay, so now let's open Postman, and within Postman, let's create a new request. This new request is gonna be a post, and it's gonna be on HTTPS localhost port 5001 /, API. Let's see what's the path for this API. So API auth management, API / auth management / register. Let's register first, and the registration, as we said, let's see what's the registration is gonna take. It's gonna take username, email, and password. So let's add those. So under body row, we select JSON. Perfect. And let's create this new JSON. So it's gonna be, as we said, username. Let's give it our email for now. It's gonna be Mohamad at email111.com. We're gonna give it an email address. It's gonna be the same. Let's copy this one, and we need to give it also a password, which is also gonna be something simple. We're just gonna put it password 11211. Okay, let's send this. Okay, perfect. We have an error. What's the error? Dependency injection. Token validation parameter while attempting to activate it. So let's see. Let's go back. Token validation parameter. Okay. Let's make sure that we have everything set in our startup class. So let's go back to our startup class. Okay, so we added it, but we didn't add it as a singleton. Excuse me, that's my fault. So here what we can do, we can just add services dot add singleton, and we just pass that token validation params. As simple as that. Let's stop it again, and now let's run it. Okay, it's running. Let's go back to Postman and send this request. Perfect. Now it's working because I forgot to inject the token validation parameters. Okay, so once we have done that, we can see that we got our token we got our refresh token, which is great. Let's try to log in. So let's copy this one. Let's make a post. I think it also is gonna require a body of type JSON, and it's gonna take an email as well as a password. Let's copy those. Okay, a bit faster. Let's see if it's still working. Username field is required. Oh, sorry. So this one needs to be login, not this is what happened when we copy paste. Now let's try it. Perfect. We got the token, we got the refresh token. Great. So now we made sure that both of our registration and login are working. The next step is to actually start building our own action, which is called refresh token. So let's go back. Let's stop at this application, and let's create a new action. And this action, we'll call it under the auth management controller. This action, we're gonna call it refresh token. So after the login, so the first thing, we're gonna make it as a post. We give it the attribute post. The second thing, we're gonna give it the route directory. So route, it's gonna be refresh token. Perfect. And then we're gonna define it. So it's gonna be public async task of iAction result. We're gonna call it refresh token, and it's gonna take from body a token request that we have created earlier, and we're gonna call it token request. Perfect. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna make sure that the object that we got is valid object. So if model state, if I can type, okay, perfect, dot is valid, we're gonna resume, else we're gonna return an error. So let's return a bad request, and we're gonna call it new, let's use the new registration response. Wait, to be honest, we need to have our own bad response, but for now, to save time, let's utilize this one. And basically all we need to do is we need to add our errors. Basically it's gonna be a list of string, and we're gonna be defining the first item in it, so it's gonna be as simple as, and we're gonna put it invalid payload. Perfect. And then we're gonna add the success to false. So now once we have done that, now let's continue in the case that this actually work. So how do we do that? Let's first create a function called verify token. So verify token, and we'll pass the token request to it. So once we have passed the token request to it, let's create this function because currently it doesn't exist. So here let's create a new function called verify token. So private async, it's gonna be task, it's gonna return the same auth result, because if it actually work, we're gonna generate a new token. So auth result verify token, and it's gonna take the token request that got sent to us. Token request. Perfect. So once we have that, the first thing we need to do is we need to create a JWT token handler in order for us to start doing the verification on the token that we have received. So far, JWT token handler equal new JWT security token handler. And since this function is gonna be prone to generating errors and crashing, so the safest way to do that and safest way to utilize this functionality that we're going to be adding is having it inside a try and catch block. So let's create a try, and then let's add the catch as well, and exception, let's put it ex, and we'll return a null in case something goes wrong. Let's fix the references, except, oh, I think I mistype it, so it's gonna be perfect. So right now, after we have created our try catch, right, what we need to do is we need to have our main verifier, which is gonna be taking the token from the token request and making sure that the string that has been passed to us is actually a valid token and not just a random string. So in order for us to do that, we'll create var new variable, we'll call it verified token, or we call it, for example, token in verification. So because it's gonna go to a different step, verification, okay, equal JWT token handler dot validate token, and basically this gonna take the token request dot token, and we're gonna pass it the token validation params that we have injected in the beginning, and it's gonna read out a validated token out for validated token, and we're gonna close it. So basically this function here is you're gonna be utilizing the JWT security token handler. it has a function called validate token, which is going to make sure that the token that we have is actually a JWT token. And then we're going to pass it the token from the token request. We're passing it the token validation parameters. And now if you look right now at the token validation parameter in the startup class, we can see that those parameters that we are sending are these things here, which is the security key, which has got encrypted by and different time, is if it's validated for lifetime, the audience, the issuer, and all of these different parameters that we have. So when we're injecting this into different part of the application, we are reutilizing it within the JWT token handler to verify that our token actually belongs to our application based on the configuration that we have selected. So once we have done that, and now the next step for us is to actually see if this, so just to do a step back. So right now within this function right here, we just validated that the string that we have is actually a JWT token. The next step for us is to check if this JWT token that we have has been encrypted using the encryption that we have specified. So in order for us to do that, it's going to be a very simple as well. We're going to be using an if statement. We're going to using the validated token that it has been generated for us. And we're going to see if it is a JWT security token. And let's initialize it. And then within this if statement, we're going to see, let's do var result equal JWT security token. And we're going to go to the header, and then we're going to go to the algorithm, and then we're going to check equal security algorithms. I think we use the HMCA, let's see, HMAC, sorry, 256, and string comparisons, it's gonna be invariant culture. Perfect. So let's add this, and once we have this, what we need to make sure is if the result is true or false. So basically this function will return a bool to check if these if the token that we have is encrypted with the security algorithm. So if result equal false, we're gonna return none because it doesn't match. So this was our first level validation 1. This is our second validation 2, and now we're gonna do the third validation. There's gonna be roughly around 7 validation, I think. Validation 3. So validation 3 is we're gonna check the expiry time of that token. We're gonna make sure that the token that we have is still valid within the expiry time. So var UTC expiry date, we're gonna call this variable, equal long.parse, because basically we're parsing a long time of so basically the token is saved as UTC time, and UTC time usually is an integer. It's the number of seconds from 1st of January 1970 till now. So usually it's a very long string, so this is why we utilize the long one. And we're gonna use the token in verification dot claims dot first or default, and we're gonna basically match it on the expiry date. So it's gonna be x, it's gonna be the lambda function dot type equal JWT registered claims names dot expiry, and then we're gonna utilize the value. Perfect. So again, as a small summary, we utilized long because we're using the UTC time frame, and then from the token invalidation we went to the claims, and we got the first one that actually matched the JWT claims name, which is going to be the expiry date, and we got the value for it. So after we do that, the next step is we need to convert this date that we have to an actual date that we can compare with. So how do we do that? Let's create a function. We're gonna call it Unix timestamp to date time. So first we create a variable, we'll call it expiry, for example date. It's not gonna be Unix timestamp. We'll create a function Unix timestamp to date time. Perfect. And we're gonna pass the UTC expiry date. Now let's create this function. It's gonna be also a very simple function. Let's scroll all the way here. Perfect. And this function is gonna be also private. It's gonna return date time. We pass this one the name of the function, and it's gonna take a double, and the double is gonna be the Unix timestamp, or we can use a long because actually we made it as long. So Unix timestamp. Perfect. And within this function we're gonna utilize system date, so date time var, and we're gonna call it date time val equal new date time, and we're gonna initialize this date time for the 1970, January 1st 1970, so it's gonna be 1971 1, and then it's gonna be 0 0 0 0 0. I think it's 4 zeros, 1 2 3 4, yeah, 4 zeros. And then lastly what we need to do is we need to add what type of time that we wanted to compare with. It's gonna be UTC, so we put system, so put date time kind dot UTC. UTC. Perfect. After that, it's gonna be a very simple comparison. We're just gonna add the number of seconds, so it's gonna be date time to date time val equal date time val dot add seconds. We're adding the seconds from that time, and we're gonna add the Unix timestamp. Unix timestamp, and then we're gonna convert to local time. Okay, perfect. And we're gonna return this. So return date time val. Date time val. Perfect. So once we have done this, now let's return back to our verification. So we are already on verification number 3, which is checking the date time span. And now let's check it. So once we got this, the next step for us is gonna be, I think we have some kind of an error here. Let's check. Because I'm getting these warnings, it means that, what's the warning? It's expected. Oh, we didn't close it, and it's causing an issue. Okay, perfect. So let's go back to the function. So the third validation was to check the expiry time frame, and in order for us to do that, what we need is simple gonna be if else statement. So we're gonna put if expiry date is bigger than date time dot UTC. Now we're gonna compare it on UTC. So if it is bigger, it means that this refresh token has not yet expired, and the user, well, we can let the user get a new one, but if the token has not expired, there is no need for us to generate another one. But it all depends on the scenarios that you want to use. So let's return a new auth result, and again it's only gonna return errors. So firstly the success equal false, and the errors is gonna be equal new list of strings string, and let's define this. It's gonna be we're gonna make it token has not yet expired. Simple. Perfect. So after we've done that, the next step for us is to check if this actual token exists in our database. So this is gonna be validation 4. So how do we do that? Basically, we're gonna check against our API DB context. So var, gonna call it stored token equal await. You utilize the API DB context dot refresh tokens, perfect, dot first or default, and we're gonna check this refresh token based on the actual token. So x dot token equal token request equal token request dot token. Okay, great. So once we have got this, we need to make sure that, why is it giving us this? Oh, okay, we didn't use the async one, which is fine. Okay, and I think this one requires link. Perfect. So what we're gonna check right now, if this token is empty or not. So if this value is null, and so this means that this token does not exist in our database, we're gonna return back to the user that refresh token does not exist. We shouldn't really give a lot of information, only we're gonna need to give the bare minimum information so the users will know what's going on. But we shouldn't really give a lot of information. So first we're going to do if stored token equal null. We're gonna return, let's copy this, it's faster, and paste it, and instead of this one we're gonna say token does not exist. Perfect. So validation number 4 is we're gonna check if this token exists. So since we already checked here that this token, if this token is used, so since we checked that the token already exists, now we need to check if this token has already been used before. So validation number 5, it's gonna be if stored token dot is used, so the revoke's gonna come after. So if it is used, we're just gonna return an error saying that this token has been used. Token has, let's change this, has been used. Simple message. Then we're gonna do validation number 6, which is gonna be if, check if it has been revoked or not. Stored token dot is revoked. We're gonna return an error, and we're gonna token has been revoked. Perfect. So after those, what we need to check right now, we need to check the JWT ID. So how do we do that? It's gonna be also, we're gonna utilize the claims in order for us to get it. So we're gonna use var. I'm not sure what I called it. Let's see. We called it token in verification. Perfect. So var, we'll call it JSON token ID equal token in verification dot claims dot first or default. We're gonna utilize the type, and the type equal JWT registered claims names dot GTI. Perfect. Dot value, and we're gonna close it. We don't really need to close it, it's already closed. Okay, so after that, what we need to do, we need to make sure that this GTI matches the ID of the refresh token that exists in our database. So let's do this equal validation 7, and here it's gonna be a simple if statement. So if stored token dot JWT ID equal JTI, sorry, it's not equal JTI, so we're gonna return a simple error with token does not match. We don't really need to give much more information. Doesn't match. Perfect. So after that, we made sure that all of these validation, and we make sure that everything has passed. Right now we need to update the token that we have because apparently it's valid, and we need to generate a new one for the user, and because this one has already been valid, so we can mark it as been used. So how do we do that? It's also very simple. So right now we'll make update current token. So how do we do that? Basically we just take the stored token that we have got before, stored token dot is used is gonna be true. So in the future if someone else try to use it, it's gonna be already used. And then we're gonna update the database. So API DB context dot tokens refresh token dot update, and we're gonna pass the stored token. Simple as that. And then we're gonna just await, and we're gonna use the API DB context to complete, basically to save the changes async. Once we have done that, what we need to do right now is we need to get the user that is logged in based on the information that we have from the JWT token that we have, and then based on that user we're gonna create a new JWT token which include a new refresh token as well. Also, how do we do that? Also very simple. We're gonna utilize the user manager class that we have defined it before. So we call it db user equal await underscore user manager dot find by ID. Where is it? Find by ID. Okay. And then we're gonna use the stored token dot user ID because we already have it. And then after that we're just gonna return a simple await generate token, generate JWT token, and we're gonna pass the DB user that we have. Perfect. So this is a simple validation for our JWT token. So let's change the name from verify and generate, so it will reflect what we're doing. So verify and generate token. So we did the validation. So this is gonna be an await, and it's gonna return for us a object. So how do we do that? It's gonna be as simple as var result equal the function, and then we're gonna return it. So first we need to make sure that if it's null or not. So if result equal null, maybe something went wrong, maybe the user is not active anymore, could be different reasons. So if it's null, we'll return a bad request. Let's copy this and paste it here, and instead of this error what we can say invalid tokens. And in case everything goes well and we make sure that the result has been generated successfully, we return OK with the result inside of it. Perfect. So this is a simple function which is called verify and generate tokens. This function basically do 7 types of validation on the token that we currently have, and those 7 level of validation goes firstly to verify if it's an actually valid JWT token format. Then it actually let's add these comments here. So validate JWT token format. Then it actually validate the encryption, validate encryption algorithm, and then it validate the expiry date. And then it does the DB check, validate existence of the token, and then validate if it's used or not, and then validate if it's revoke, and validate the ID. Validate the ID, and lastly generate a new token, which is set update, and here it's gonna be generate a new token. Perfect. So now since we have all of this, let's save, make sure everything is saving, and now let's build, make sure the application is building successfully. Perfect. Now let's run the application. .NET run. Now, in order for us to verify that everything is working, we're gonna do 4 types of tests. First, we're gonna log in, and we're gonna use the JWT token directly and to get a new token, and that should fail because the timestamp is less than 30 seconds. The second time is the second thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take that JWT token and wait after 30 seconds and try it again, see if we get a new token, and then we're gonna use the same token over again and see if it's actually gonna generate one for us or it's giving us a message that has already been used. So let's go back to Postman, and as we can see here, we logged in and we got a token. So let's try to log in again. First, let's create the endpoint before we log in so we can save time. So post, let's copy this one. What did I name the endpoint? I think it's called refresh token. Yeah, refresh token. So we'll call it refresh token. And it's gonna take a body row of type JSON, and it's gonna take the refresh token as well as the token. So let's try to log in first. Perfect. Now let's copy paste these and let's paste them here and try to log in directly. It should give us invalid because the token did not expire yet. Now let's wait for around 30 seconds. Let's wait for another 30 seconds. Let's wait. For testing, we can make it 15 to 20 seconds, but let's see right now. I think we need another 10 seconds. Let's try now. Still, it says token does not exist. Okay, so we have an issue. So token does not exist. So let's check the validation of our functions on the token does not exist. So token, validate if token exists. Token does not exist. So when it's trying to get it directly from the database, it's not. No worries. First of all, let's make sure that our database is actually saving those tokens. So let's open dbbeaver and let's refresh, view data. Okay, we have information, and let's check what's the token start with that we have. The refresh token start with 0fx. So we have 0fx, so it does exist. I wonder why, what happened. So let's check again. So first or default, so we're checking the token against the token. Oh, sorry, we need to check against the refresh token. Okay, my bad. So let's stop it again and let's run it. Okay, now it's running correctly. Now let's check if it's actually working. So let's go back to Postman and send it again. And we can see it generated for us a new refresh token perfectly. So now let's take this one again and try to run it in less than 30 seconds. It should give us, first, before we do that, let's run this again. It should give us that this token has already been used. Token has been used. And now let's take this one, paste it. Has not expired yet, so let's wait 30 seconds. Perfect. So just to reset everything and make sure we go through our testing scenario all over again, let's try to log in with the same account. Log in we got a new refresh token. Let's copy paste these. So we'll copy them and let's paste them here. And now let's send it. It should give us it's not expired, which is the expected answer. Let's wait for 30 seconds now. And after that, we're gonna run this one again. It should tell us that has already been used. Perfect. We have requested it and we got a new token as well as a refresh token. Now if we click on this again, it should tell us that has already been used. Perfect. And right now we have passed all of the testing that we have, which is great. So just to do a quick summary, within this video, what we did is we updated our APIs in order for it to support refresh tokens. So we updated the functionality within our auth management controller. We added a new endpoint, we added some models as well as DTOs, and we updated our database to have a new table which is going to be storing all of the refresh tokens. I hope you really found this video really helpful, and please like, share and subscribe to watch more videos like this. Thank you very much for your time and see you next time. Oh, one more thing, the links to the source code is going to be available in the description down below. Thank you very much.